me have you two start off with 2D100 rolls, and then I'm curious what kind of plans you all have going through the day, what sort of talks you might have had with this now sixth cube, the fourth cube in your actual possession, and if you all had any other thoughts with
It was
Orvex.
Oh,
it was
the
O
old man.
something, yeah.
Yeah, I have him as Orvex.
So that was what the sixth temple that we found.
Uh, Technically seventh. It is the sixth cube that you all have located. The first two of which you guys gave to Rosny. And then you have explored one temple that you were not able to get a cube from, which was Ejin's.
That's right. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I'm just kind of considering the areas of the map we haven't explored yet. I think there's a possibility there might be one um, north of us, or again, or to the southwest, kind of in that other area below where we found the fifth temple and that big walled compound. Can we see across the this like lava pit if we went to the edge? Um,
As far as things go, if you all wanted to get a sight to the pit, you could 100% get to the edge of it. Um, the easiest way to kind of envision it is you would probably want to like go to one of the walls, but they are still vine ridden, but it's the type of thing where Taryn again can climb anything. You could easily open up a little bit where he is basically standing on top of it, and you essentially have that view. The southeastern part is closer to the cliff edge, but again, even that like slight little bit of green to the east of it is between like 50 and 70 feet at times from the actual cliff edge. It's kind of a weird, because again, like the scales at the bottom here, where like on my screen, about a centimeter is about 50 feet.
right. Okay.
So if you all have the discussion about the map as you see it and where you're starting to see things, you'll have a certain level of Orvex will kind of ask you questions to frame stuff into his like mental understanding of this city. Um, but I think at very least when you discuss the actual the pit here, like the lava pit, I think he's going to be able to answer to you all that one of the temples that he went to, the mages had to levitate him and move him across a gulf.
Okay. Yeah. So that sounds like that building there in the middle. Maybe not sure how we're gonna find a way over there unless suppose we could go back to Rosny and see if they have anything that could get us there. Um, but Jarek, not being a big fan of Rosny, is probably prefer to maybe leave that one for last.
So this is one of those occasions where as far as Island goes, he has the ability to cast levitate. He can levitate any of the party members across the gulf, um, and you guys could cross like that. Effectively, you could migrate across it with like what you guys have, and rope.
Okay, because I wasn't sure how the first person would get there because they would have to essentially be like, could they just like push off the cliff edge and
Yeah, effectively, yeah. The most hilarious part about this, from my perspective, is that it is a 60-foot gap. The game only produces rope in 50-foot increments, but I don't think they ever really talk about the fact that they just say 50 feet, like it's per 50 feet. So I think a lot of people tend to have 50-foot lengths. And the book just says if you've got a grappling hook, you can throw it across. It's 60 feet. And it's like you only ever produce 50 feet of rope. So no, they can't just do that. But yeah, you guys could cross that with Larry's levitate, a couple of ropes on that person, so they are basically dragging across a rope source. Um, as far as how complicated you guys would produce, like a rope bridge, you can do other things, but that comes down to how many ropes do you all have as a group.
I feel like we're pretty good for rope, but
Yeah, so if you go with like 4 ropes, and the person doesn't necessarily have to cross with everything at once, for one thing. But if you have 4 ropes, you can have a rope that you stand on and a rope that you balance your torso with. If you've got 6 ropes, you could cross with basically 2 ropes for your hands, 1 rope to stand on, and then obviously anything else beyond that, you're just building structures.
yeah, it looks like Jarek's got about 90 feet of rope and then two portions that he could, tie off to make one longer.
How many does Taryn have?
He has one length of 50 feet.
I am loading up Island and Zaps right now.
I think we used a lot. We had a whole bunch, and I think we ended up using some at might have been before Omu somewhere that we ended up kind of leaving some rope behind. But
Gotcha. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, but also most of the time, I feel like you're probably retrieving it. Looks like Island's got a 50-foot length, and then Zaps has 50 feet as well. So what is it? Jarek, you said you had 90.
yes, I think we got about what that's 240
Yeah,
between us.
you guys could do the 2 lengths, like one to walk on and one to steady your torsos with. I'm not sure if you guys have ever seen like a climb like that. Otherwise, I mean, you are adventurers. I don't think it's insane to imagine that you guys know how to um traverse a rope, like with one leg kind of hooked across it with your heel, and you almost like cover your body across the length of the rope, pulling with your arms, and you like hang one leg down as ballast.
Right, almost like the rope climb, but horizontally rather than vertically.
Yeah, I mean, you can see like special forces do it, and they can be pretty freaking fast. But again, this is where you guys are heroic. So if your idea is to cross this, you all can certainly make that process. And again, this can still all be planning like that actual night of. Part of the idea here is I feel like when we accelerated things, we might have forgotten the fact that you now have Orvex with you, and he is essentially the Red Wizard's specialist on these.
Right. So, what do you think, Taryn? Do you want to try and get over there, or is there another place you wanted to look first?
We're now curious about Orvex. If he's been there, does he know if they took anything from there? Because if they did,
I think at this point, you guys are, yeah, pretty much on the level of, that they've taken I think he said he knew that they took two, and that he had visited three temples. So I think that's enough to say that you guys pretty much understand that they've taken Ijin and Mao. He could name it as Mao's, and that is Mao's temple that is on that pinnacle. The third temple that he was going to that they had found was then where you met them at Neng Neng.
Okay, so if they got that one hopeful or possibly left that's still out there. If they've been to that temple, it's probably not there.
Um, at some point during your conversations, as you guys are describing the kind of map of this area and your sort of understanding here, I figure on some level, Larry or Island is almost like drawing this. What you guys envision here is his kind of drawing, and I think at some point during the conversation, Orvex can basically point out a theory that you guys have already heard before, where he will basically recount that there should be three on one side, three on one side, three in the center, three on top, three in the middle, and three on the bottom. That this city should split up into a grid of like 9 zones, basically. So while you guys are discussing, at some point, you're basically going to have him pointing to the center of the map.
Okay, so yeah, so like 5, 6, and the Mao Temple. That looks like that's probably the bottom row. And we got 2, 3, and 4 up at the top. We got one and the one that had already been taken. Yeah, so suggest there's one. Yeah, somewhere in the center there. That makes sense. Perhaps we should try and make our way back towards the that and what that uh, circular walled area where the Yuan-ti were. There may be a place kind of to the west of that.
At some point, you also, my apologies for jumping backward. At some point, you mentioned going to the southwest. Orvex could also share with you that um, that is essentially where they came in. He understands southwest of their camp was the entrance into this, where there's almost like a step in the natural earth that like progresses down into Omen from the jungles above.
Okay. Yeah, so Jarek is thinking kind of from where we are, if we head north and then maybe try and cross the water back towards the east, should hopefully maybe be able to find uh last temple we need to visit.
Yeah, that sounds good. We could get up on that highway we've been up on before. I mean, I'm not sure if it was a highway or if it was something else, but
And Taryn had spotted uh, 3 other buildings that were in that area, and you guys looked at as potential uh, temples earlier.
Yeah, so Taryn, do you think we try and get back on the wall, or do you want to just try and cut our way up north, just go a little more directly?
yeah, I think we could go a bit like the more direct route.
Sounds good to me.
Alrighty. If you guys are sticking on kind of the inside here and you more or less intend to follow sort of the edge of both the cliff face into the lava as well as the river that dumps into that crater, let's just go for a survival from you both here, and we'll see how that kind of progresses forward. Um, and this will probably be maybe like 3 hours to the like low two, and 4 or 5 if you went to the high. But as far as things go with those roles, I think it sounds good for you all to recognize pretty quickly that that is essentially just kind of buildings that could certainly be interesting, but they're certainly not temples. Is there anything distracting you about kind of searching for treasure versus just trying to stick towards uh, going for the temples that you need?
I think at this point, Jarek's pretty focused on the cubes because we're kind of in a race as he sees it.
Yeah, the same with Terran. He really wants to find the possible last cube before the wizards take it.
Gotcha. So you might find like there's part of like Orvex's knowledge is kind of talking about things like effectively this city was like the city of jewels. Kind of connect some of the dots in when you guys found like dust that was entirely like palpable that you can pick up gems in dust form kind of thing. Just kind of a description of this was like El Dorado, but for jewels as far as Chalt was concerned in the past. And he kind of has these things where he'll certainly talk about searching for them, but is very quick to follow the excitement of finding the next cube. As far as things go, I'd say you guys could get close enough again to those two to spot that they are not temples. Probably don't get a close look at the one that is still north of you that Taryn had seen. You can spot a place to cross this river where a tree has fallen across the actual the river here. It is nearly at its fastest. This is perhaps one of the most dangerous places, but the quickest and narrowest of the river, which is also why the water is like faster at this point. And the water itself, it's probably deepest below you at this point as well. Um, you guys could certainly cross it here just at this tree. Uh, let's say it's probably still 20 or so feet wide.
Jarek, Jarek's thinking if there's any way to avoid going into having to wade through the water itself, he's ready to take it, given been almost eaten by a crocodile and actually eaten by a froghemoth so far. So despite the danger, that's what he's looking at, maybe trying to use that tree.
Does that sound good for Terran? I don't think the tree would even look like a challenge in the least bit for Terran.
And that's fine with Terran. He's like whatever Yerrick finds safest for him. So
And Jarek would probably just be like, give a, to Island, be like, just, be ready in case someone falls. Because it looks
All
like
right.
that water essentially is the current southward.
Yep, yep.
Bringing,
It's draining into the cliff, like into the lava below you guys there.
Yeah, so that could be bad if someone gets swept away.
Extremely, because all of that water flow, I think I might have talked about this in the past, but there's like the most dangerous river in the world is this, or the most like deadly stream in the world is this little river in England. And it's because it's like a foot and a half wide, but it's like hundreds of feet deep in these like cracks in the earth. So you just look at it like it's a little stream, but if you ever get touched by the water, it's so much volume flowing through there that it's just going to drag you into the rocks and effectively pummel you, which is exactly, I think, what that would look like. It would be horrific. Very loud kind of cacophony of the actual flow of this river in that area. Um, the river would look suspiciously calm below you, but the noise of it is still there. It's almost like magnified through the rocks.
And I imagine is that like is probably a bunch of like steam coming up for where the water hits the lava.
Yep, exactly. Yep. You guys kind of would have seen that. I think I described that when you saved the son of um the Nang Nang chief. Uh but yeah, you guys would have been right on the edge of that where you would have seen some of the steam because yeah, all of that water is dumping into the lava pit.
Yeah. Yeah, so Jarek is thinking, well, Terran's, you're the best on your, you're the best on your feet. If you scrambled over with a rope, and then Jarek could maybe kind of hold on to the rope while he's crossing. Um, although now that I think about it, Jarek weighs a lot more than Terran does, so he'd probably, if anything, drag Terran in. Um,
I
yeah, so maybe
thought
just have.
you were just starting with the idea though of having Island effectively stay kind of ready to levitate somebody who fell in. Was that not where you were going with that?
Yeah, no, I think that's the better original plan. And then maybe I'll have Jarek take a rope over because, or I guess Island can levitate himself as well if he needs to, because he has a tendency to fall in when he tries crossing stuff.
For what it's worth, I think that's the actual answer there. Once you guys get the rope over, you may not want Taryn to be the person who's simply holding it, but Taryn could definitely tie it to like trees and or vines. He could certainly secure it there. That effectively turns it into anybody who falls in would at least get pulled to the right side of the water. It doesn't mean that the water still couldn't be dangerous and still potentially drown you. But it's something. It would get you across to the right side. Floating uh floating somebody with levitation is certainly an answer. It expends that resource though. But if you guys are not going to cross to check the Temple of Mao, that solves at least that issue as well. But yeah, theoretically, having the rope across, even if it's just Terran, he can tie it to something. Once Jarek's there, you could actually assist somebody, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think maybe that makes sense. Like, yeah, Terran go across with the rope. Then once you kind of secured it, Jarek can cross, and then we can get the others.
So I am usually tempted to say not one for you here, Taryn, and just do an acrobatics. But I don't even think that's satisfactory here because that's still a 5% chance. I feel like to say a not 1% here. Roll a D100. If you roll a 1, Taryn's going to fall in and they'll have to pull you back up by the rope that you're carrying.
I'm gonna laugh so fucking hard if I get a 1.
Because you're not technically climbing, but like you have a climbing speed. It's kind of a weird. But yeah, you can cross that with absolutely uh perfect like alacrity. You just kind of like skip across and make it as casual as you would like Taryn to be as he crosses this. So you guys have plenty of like vines on each side. That's probably the biggest thing that you would end up as an option to tie it to, Taryn, to keep it right next to and above the tree. But what level of security do you all want to go to passing ropes across this gap? Is one rope sufficient?
Maybe Jarek will also bring a rope across with him when he goes. He's
Well, you
thinking,
also have him there now. You could toss the rope to him and tie. You could tie whatever else you wanted to do. Like you've got somebody across the stream. This is 20 feet. You guys are talking. It might be a little much to yell to each other because of the noise, but you can definitely pass stuff between you.
oh yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, that makes more sense. I mean, Jarek's thinking he'd probably be okay with one rope, but he's also thinking Orvex. You know, he'll probably need some more assistance. Maybe even have Island just levitate him across. Um, but yeah, maybe two ropes just to be a little safer. I mean, we have the rope, so might as well use it.
So what are you thinking? Does it sound good to do one as like a handhold, and then you'll do another that's actually tied to the person and an anchor?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. So, what do you think, Taryn?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense.
Excellent. Who would you like to have cross second? Would it be Jarek?
Yeah, Jarek will go ahead second.
So let me. How do you think Jarek is crossing this? Are you just like running across, walking across, like getting down on all fours and crawling across?
I think he's gonna like walk up and he's gonna just have to take some time to essentially steel himself, and then he would essentially like take the rope, take like a deep breath, and I think he'd essentially try to just get it over with as quickly as possible, you know, and try and just run across.
Excellent. Let me get a acrobatics from you here.
Darren is just gonna shout out. Not sure if he can be heard, but still shout out. Watch out for giant crocodiles!
I would say you could make it with disadvantage for the psych out, but he's still passed. So you can definitely run across. It is still a pretty large like tree trunk. It's not terribly difficult for Jarek to pass through. As far as things go, you do a good job of effectively look to the other side. You kind of have yourself steadied with your hand, but no actual weight on it. It's just kind of like a reference for this is where your weight center should leave you. And you can effectively run across the tree. In an instant, it is over. You are across to the other side. And then we can kind of assume from here on out when someone crosses, Jarek will be holding onto the anchored rope that's tied to them.
Yep, yep. Jarek will like kind of plant himself and be ready, and I think probably it makes the most sense to send Orvex over next, just because if he falls in, I mean, we can grab him, but worst case scenario, Island can levitate him back out, and then Island would be the last. And, but, I guess it doesn't really matter at this point because Jarek can essentially help, pull anybody who falls in. But so,
Yeah, you all have quite the entourage here. So let's kind of see. Let's go for. Let me have each of you just roll a d20 for Island and for Zaps. I feel like we had you guys play them last week. Did you play them last week?
I think last week we used
Sidekicks.
mostly a sidekick.
Gotcha.
I think maybe we had Island at one point during the fight with the statues, or he was just kind of healing us behind the scenes or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, they can cross without a problem there. As far as things go, Eku will cross. I think you'll find Eku kind of like slip in. She'll change forms and basically fly herself across without actual any danger there. Um, I think that's the first time Zaps will get to see her actually turn into a dragon form. I was actually going to fuck with him pretty hard on her, like giving him false visions of like a kobold dragon lord. And then Orvex. Orvex, you guys will see with kind of like a foot on the log, he almost feels it out. And the moment he kind of has, like you guys kind of describe, are there any knots? Are there any trees? You will see by the time he starts to move, he runs across it in a very similar fashion to how Jarek ran across it. Um, he is an old man, but when you guys see this, you will see that he is still a very talented, albeit perhaps um, disarming in his age. Does that make sense? Like he's very spry. I hate that description of people, but yeah, very spry for his old age is a perfect description of what you guys will see when Orvex actually crosses that tree trunk.
Yeah, I'm thinking of Stick from Daredevil.
Is that like the TV one, or like from the comics? I don't know if I've ever.
I think that was a Netflix. I think it was the Netflix
Yeah.
show. It was played by the guy who was I can never remember his name. He was in Silence of the Lambs. He was like the head FBI guy. Something John Glenn. No.
It's just kind of that level. I feel like I can imagine the character who would be the Daredevil sidekick. But the Daredevil is actually a perfect description of what this guy would kind of give off at that point. This is one of those reminders that blind is not necessarily as difficult in this world with magic.
Yeah.
But you guys can cross. You will gain a little bit of purchase on that other side. I figure on some level you're kind of like on pretty like stony ground still in this area. But it is still vine choked. You've got some buildings that are to the east of you. Kind of beyond sight. Maybe I shouldn't have revealed the one that actually looks kind of like a temple there. Um, but I feel like on some level, the real place that you guys are looking for is probably known to be north of where you are. You have one of those highway systems that is kind of crossing above to you all. Think you guys kind of remember it. It's like the first one of those that you guys crossed when you got here. And you have basically your direction to decide.
Yeah. Jarek's thinking almost like we try and make our way back up on that. Kind of take it from west to east, looking north, seeing if we spot anything, and then if we do, we can, you know, get down somehow, either by turning back the way we came and then making our way, or just taking it to the end and then essentially bringing us back to kind of where we saw that first temple, and then just going east or west from there back towards.
I think I described at one point the height of these, that they're like 20 or so feet above the like streets below them. And I use streets as like the kind of clearings where buildings are not. Um, but these are still vine ridden. They basically have ladders down at any given point. And again, especially for Terran, who can kind of go up and down them with no problem. But does that sound good to Terran to start a survey from up above and go east to, or west to east?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, I was just gonna add, like you said, that we could just climb down from where we are and go straight for it if we see it.
Yeah, that's a better than my idea. Yeah. Like, yeah, I forgot that. Yeah, there's vines we can use to climb down.
So you guys pretty much ascend those stairs before you actually see that there is temple walls to the north of you and can immediately walk back down those stairs, heading to the north side. Spend a little bit of time clearing away the actual columns before you see at the top of each of these columns into this walled compound is a like snail with a nautilus shell that is probably about the size of like Terran's torso on top of each of these pillars. They each have like 5 large like protruding, ooh, I can't think of monopods. I can't think of the like name for when a like body or like boneless creature has like an arm, but basically they are almost like club-like tentacles or like club-like antenna that kind of come from this snail's head. But with probably about an hour's effort, you guys, probably less than that realistically, but you guys can clarify or find that you are indeed at the Flail Snail's Temple, who you guys should know at this point as Unk. So, kind of clearing away at the base here. You all, again, the flail snails are on the top of each of those pillars. They're probably about 20 or so feet high. The wall themselves are probably about like 10, 15 feet high. Getting inside of this compound, you all will almost immediately notice the ruins of a building to the west end of the compound. And then the entrance to the building, I bet there should be doors there. The entrance to the building is blocked as there are 2 large doors that are about 20 or so feet high that come together. And you can see like maybe like an inch or a couple of centimeters deep kind of bas relief of this large snail that covers the 2 doorways. Oh shit! Did you guys hear that? Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking back over my notes on Unk.
So either Orvex or Eku can recount the story here. Unk was essentially the last of the trickster gods to rise from the earth as the ruckus of all of the other tricksters fighting basically like annoyed it, and as a little bit of kind of a curmudgeon, it crawled out of the earth, and when it crawled uh, into the sun, its shell reflected the light of the sun into damn, I can't think of the god's name. Son of a bitch. brain fart.
Obtoa?
Obtoa's eyes. Obtoa cried, and the tears brought water back to Omu, and the people were saved.
Jarek is he'll turn towards Taryn. Know what we're gonna find here, but keep your head in a swivel. Gonna start approaching through the well, I guess actually first he'll kind of take a look at both of these pillars, looking for any signs of old Amount. Before, if he doesn't see any, he will continue on through them into the kind of courtyard area.
I think with a closer inspection, you will see that the pillars of this one are carved with like circular decorations. I don't think it would be that difficult to attach that to the nautilus kind of circles that the shell of Unk forms. but as far as Old Amalan goes, they do not have writing on them.
So with that, Jarek will start moving into the courtyard.
So again, you guys can see there's that small building to the west side of the courtyard that is essentially in disrepair. The roof, everything is kind of caved in. Some of the walls remain. I like kind of how this one shows like the front wall is a little bit more remaining than the rest. But essentially, that is kind of a old ruined some sort of building that is there. You can spot old Amawin inside of or above the doors, like inside of the lintel. Like many of the other temples, there is writing there for you to translate, which you can very quickly translate and find. Unk urges us to contrast all opinions before acting.
Monk urges us to contrast all opinions before acting. Hmm. You said these are double doors before us that are closed?
Yep, they are. I guess really until you're actually up there, you probably wouldn't even really notice that they're double doors. But basically, getting to these doors, you can see a large stone door blocks the wall. It wouldn't be until a couple of you start to push on this. I think Jarek, with anyone else's help, you can push the doors open. I think Taryn and Zaps are the only two who cannot push together, but effectively, I think most any way you guys do this, two of you can push the door open. And you guys will find. Would you like to push the door open? My apologies.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was like you have to push one door and pull the other door, but yeah, no, he'll go to
Definitely getting more for the idea that when they sit shut, it makes almost a seamless transition between the actual snail to show Unk, like in this little bas relief. But as far as once you go to push, wherever you kind of go, the door is just stupid heavy. But two of you working together, you can kind of separate them. And then once you both work on the same door, effectively push one in, push the other in, and you've got the doors to the temple open.
gotcha. Yeah, Jarek would go to do that.
So
Probably
this,
getting Terrence out.
gotcha.
Island's a bit weak.
This temple is windowless. It is just kind of a large block of stone in front of you. But when you guys open the door, you can see a pretty traditional kind of like granite stone, where it's like almost like lava rock stone, like the gray stone for the floors. Similar walls. This temple opens up before you. With the light that you guys have just opening the door, you can see that there is a large statue in front of you, probably about 20 to 30 feet away. When you go to actually create a light source, you guys will see that there's about a 10-foot hall to the north of you before it opens up into this large I think you could spot square room with a large statue that is about 20 feet tall in the center of it, that is in the shape of a flail snail.
Yeah, I think Jarek would kind of once you get the doors open and step inside would light up his lantern, leave it unhooded at this point as we kind of proceed in a little further and the light from outside starts to kind of fade or doesn't penetrate far in into the temple.
Oh, and Mara, do you want us to put out our sidekicks as well on the map, or?
Yeah, you might as well drop Quinn, right? And then Zeros. Entering in a little bit more, you guys can see that there are 6 alcoves that kind of set into each of the walls around you. The creature that is in the center of this room has 6 keys dangling from those. I have 5 of these clubs, but it's holding 6 keys, I'm pretty sure. Has 5 of these like club-like tentacles that are kind of coming out from its face. Each one has a key that is like a brass key on a ring that is dangling from it. And there is another alcove that is larger behind this that has a kind of pedestal on it that sits empty right now. As far as these temples go, it will not take you long to recognize that at some point the cube from Ankh is going to be presented from that pedestal. But as you all move into this room, Jarek, you are going to hear from your sword that you are all in danger. And I need you guys to roll initiative. Taryn, do you suppose that you've had your knives out already at this point?
No, I don't actually think I would. I would have had
Okay.
light from the
Do
rings.
you do you suppose that Jarek has his short sword out, or do you suppose you are like? I guess realistically, this is me asking for both of you. Like, are you going into your 8th temple as if you are investigating, or do you think you have both weapons out?
But I think Jarek would have. I mean, he has his his main blade out. He had brought he had the lantern lit after they, but maybe kind of once they start going inside, he would have. I feel like he would have handed the lantern back to Zeros to hold, and then probably. I mean, we've been attacked in most of these temples, so he probably would have
Gotcha.
taken out. Yeah.
You're likely to be handing the lantern off to Zeros kind of thing at this point, like in that transition, because effectively, as soon as the lantern light is kind of really shining across this whole area and starts to like kind of give you guys the image that you see of this building, you are basically going to hear just kind of this almost like hissing kind of gargle, and a creature is going to run out and from behind the statue of Ankh. And it is actually going to leap from between 2 of these large club-like appendages coming from the snail from up above, and it is going to pounce upon. It's going for Zeros. It is basically. Oh, I grabbed all 3.
Is a pseudopod? Is that what the word you're looking for?
Yes, pseudopod is definitely what I was looking for. If I looked up like the actual creature, I know it would have said there, but I was trying to just go from memory. But yes, 100% pseudopod. Um, yeah, I think for things, it'll go to that space. It is effectively going to leap down and from above, and it is going to try to claw into Zeros. 17 should hit Zeros.
Yep.
Let's go for a con 10 and then a second Constitution saving throw here. All right, so he's going to lose 1 wound from that first one. The save is going to be successful, and that is far more important for you guys here, as Zeros is going to feel the slashes of this creature cutting through his flesh, and as it cuts into his flesh, it will burn. And he staunches himself and will be able to continue fighting here. It is going to go to Taryn. What would you, sir, like to do? You see this creature leaping down. It's humanoid. Much of its flesh you can see has wounds or has started to rot. This is clearly undead. What is Taryn reacting here with?
Well, first things first, Terran is gonna summon his blades. Because those were not out yet. And then he's gonna try to get... Can I move, like, over to, let's see, here?
Yeah, your movement here is effectively, again, unimpeded. As
Is that
far as
possible for
things
Terran to go?
go,
Like,
it,
on the way past Yarrick and up there?
yeah, because here's the thing, like anybody else, that would be difficult terrain, but you are climbing, and your character has a climbing speed, is effectively what second story work is.
Alright, yeah, I forgot about
So that's part of why I described, like, that tree trunk would never have been any actual sort of problem, is because technically I think a climbing speed almost demystifies like the danger of those things. In the same way, you can literally run up and down that flail snail as if it's just like a staircase.
Alright, well then, I'm over here. Bonus action someone else, then I'm gonna try to attack. See if I hit.
This creature is just open flesh, very little signs of any clothing actually remaining. The most difficult part about hitting this creature is certainly just the speed at which it is moving. Trying to predict and keep ahead of where its body's going. You are able to sink that blade in, drawing it through. A solid wound of, what is that, 22 damage. It's going to leave a pretty massive gash like through the torso of this creature. If this were something that were alive, it would be difficult to remain alive very long with wounds like that. Uh, any other movement? Otherwise, I think we're probably over with you, and it will go to Jarek.
Quinn.
Oh yeah, my bad. Damn. Yep, follow up with your character. Quinn, you're kind of in. Yeah, I mean, she's almost better off with the difficult terrain of moving past Jarek through the creature, and then she could get to the right side of the creature for, what is that, 25 movement?
You mean like there?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, then she would like to do that. And then take a swing.
Otherwise, she's like climbing on top of the statue and fighting from on top of the statue, which she's entirely allowed to do.
Yeah, but probably wouldn't work that well.
Whenever possible, you should hang from the chandelier and fight from the chandelier. So I'm kind of rethinking maybe she should have. One more attack. She's over the 5th level. Second attack will hit. Another 11 damage. Certainly going to wound the creature. Ooh.
I was thinking you have her climb up the statue and then just leap off with like a big two-handed and just like cleave the thing like straight down the middle from above.
That attack is certainly going to be a pretty massive cleaving attack. This creature is certainly near death at this point. And it's going to go to Jarek and Zeros.
Yeah, so Jarek will be like, Zeros, get back, as he sees the thing kind of launch itself and start clawing into him. And he's going to, even as he's saying that, he's slashing out with it's almost like it's like a cutlass machete kind of thing that he's been using to help clear the brush.
Gotcha. Solid hit into that. At this point, we are pretty much going to have you killing that creature. For what it's worth, is everything's happening in the same moment. I'd say Zeros can hold his action. He certainly understands that there's more coming here. You guys aren't finished, but there are no more targets specifically for you there. Does Jarek move forward?
I think he's after he drops this thing, he's actually going to move. I think he's gonna want to stay clicks. It's gonna be like stay close. Maybe trying to move up towards beside Taryn.
Gotcha. Probably around the time when you're kind of getting around the statue, you can already see the other figures that are kind of all almost like hunched over, bent around the backside of this statue. For what it is worth, these creatures are going to start to attack here. So let me just have you roll the 2 blasts from Zeros at the first of these to kind of run after you guys.
It's
So
13,
both of those will hit for 8.
8 total. Yeah. And Zeros is basically staying a bit behind the other, so he would kind of remaining back.
Gotcha. So we basically have the first one is going to leap down at Quinn. The second one is going to leap down again at Zeros, as much as you want to protect him. And then they are each going to do the same. So the claw at Quinn will miss. Claw at Zeros will hit. 2 more Constitution saves. The first one is for DC 10, and then the second one you will not know. Again, you'll take the wound. You will not be paralyzed. And it's going to go to... Oh, shit. Damn it. It's going to go to Taryn, but I forgot about this. Taryn, it smells so wretchedly like rot. I need you to make a Constitution saving throw, please.
2. And then, by that I mean the one like directly beneath him, the one that attacked Quinn.
Solid hit for another 18, and then for 7 more for 25.
And then Quinn is gonna follow up with her sword strikes.
Yeah, and Quinn is going to cut it down with those. You can do any movement that you would like with your characters here, Taryn. Jarek, I need Zeros to take a con save here, but otherwise you can take both of your turns here.
Those first ones are terrible. 1, 2, and 4.
With that one, he is just poisoned. It just means he has disadvantage. Technically, as long as he's in combat trying to cast, he would have disadvantage anyways. But Effectively, that's all that's really happening. The actual like stench of these rotting corpses is just making him kind of retch enough that it, distracts him just enough from his spellcasting.
Gotcha. Yeah, so Jarek kind of almost trying to like hold his breath is going to step here in front of kind of as Quinn is cutting down the one. He's almost like stepping past and laying into the one that had launched itself at Zeros.
Solid hit for 12. And then 13 more, 25. Bonus action? Got your sword out yet?
Yep, now he's got the short sword now, so
Short sword is going to come up short again as these things are moving. They are unarmored, but they are quick, and the body is just not there to cut into. Onto Zeros.
yep, Zeros just essentially kind of like retching and almost like not even looking at the thing. He's just gonna kind of throw out his hand and try to launch a couple Eldritch blasts. Those should both miss.
Yeah.
And
As far as what do you think?
I think he's almost instinctively he's been clawed a couple times. I think the stench and everything, I think he's gonna try and get away from it.
Gotcha. I will go for the reaction from it to claw at you. It is going to sink into you. 2 more con saves. Save the wound. You are going to be paralyzed.
So that would
So, as far as things go here, yeah, it is basically keeping you frozen as you're trying to get away from him. As soon as it infects him, this thing is going to go from kind of like a uh, of voracious. No, this thing is going to go like rabid. You've got something that is like hostile, quick, acting like kind of a predator of sorts. But the moment it claws into him, and his body freezes up, this thing is going to like go into a rage as it starts to sink into his flesh. It is going to uh, bite down on his neck, basically like mounting into him, and then it's going to try to bite down into his throat. It will hit with a 22, and it is going to deal. Oh, it's not even that thick. DC 12 save, please. Yeah, you can prevent that wound as it tries to bite into him. I see no reason that you guys are not going to be able to kill this creature. And then within, depending on how the saves go, you guys can see how long the poison goes for. Do you want to roll those so we know like how long he would stay basically frozen and paralyzed here?
Sure. Oh yeah,
Gotcha.
I'll start
So-
rolling.
Yep, just start a con save. I just need you to roll it till you hit the 10, which you're really going to push. Yeah, so he's going to go about 24 total seconds where Zeros is just frozen in place trying to get away. And when he comes to, there's going to be a slow recovery of his muscles, where he'll be able to move. The adrenaline of being out of battle kind of prevents it from kind of happening right away. This is essentially to not like hold back if you ever had that happen in combat. But it is going to be a weird level of experience for him coming away from this paralysis where his consciousness is like locked away in a body that doesn't move.
And I think kind of in that period while he was kind of paralyzed, Jarek would have, grabbed the lantern so that, if he comes back, he doesn't kind of instinctively like drop it or something. Um, but he'll be glad.
No fire for the paralyzed kid.
And I assume the smell doesn't get any better once these things are dead.
No, effectively, you guys have the understanding that these are rotting corpses. I think the last time the group encountered these creatures, I feel like is when you all lost Brandier.
Is that when we lost Barney outside
Barney, yeah.
the camp?
Was that Barney and Island who were outside of the camp?
Yeah, they were trying to work on like the drainage or something. And
Yeah. So I think it would be enough that Island could identify these creatures. There's a couple of creatures that are undead known enough to recognize that ghouls are some sort of reanimated, like rotting corpse, and they thirst for flesh. Their entire existence is the consumption of flesh. And they have such a horrid rot that they're very like scratch from their nails will effectively paralyze you with like botulism. Um, and I think Island would then also be able to recount that when Barney fell, there was one ghoul that seemed to be controlling the other ones. And this is the first time he will see those creatures traveling in a pack, not with ghouls. These are all kind of the higher form.
yeah, so once this kind of the third one goes down, Jarek's gonna like while they're waiting for Zeros, they kind of be listening if they hear any more of that like kind of gurgling, hissing kind of stuff. But once kind of Zeros comes back too, and once it seems like they've dealt with the immediate threat, um, I mean, Jarek would want to kind of take a look at these keys, see do they look more or less similar to each other? Are there any distinctions between them?
All right. Yeah, you guys will pretty quickly hear all of the sounds kind of dying off as the last of these creatures basically stops. I feel like they would have kind of a weird way that their bodies are still manipulating their lungs, so they're almost like empty bags of kind of hisses. But that would kind of be like the end of kind of the battle. It would die off, the sounds would return to kind of like a natural jungle, like in the background for you all. As far as this room goes, you guys would notice the 6 different keys. Um, let's see. Okay, I was wrong. The 6 keys hang in those alcoves already. When you look at the keys, all of them seem to be a ring, the shaft, and then a few bars that make the different um oh man, I forget the name of it for a key, but like the point where it actually turns and like manipulates the actual like mechanism inside of them. All of them have the same basic makeup, but you can notice looking over these 6 keys that each key is unique from the last. None of these 6 keys are the same.
Do we see any keyholes on the alcoves?
You can see that there is indeed a keyhole on the top of the pedestal.
Okay.
Tumblr.
The tumbler is a thing in the lock, right? Is there some special word for the the part that's on the key itself, like the.
Oh, I don't know the name of them other than that they're essentially ridges, but those are the things that manipulate the tumblers. If you basically move the tumbler into the right place, it removes the tension. So usually, like if you look at any of those keys, what is it? 5 of them manipulate a lock with 2 tumblers. One of them manipulates a lock with 3 tumblers. And it's basically kind of a difficulty of picking the lock is kind of recognizing how many tumblers you always kind of manipulate, like with a little bit of tension, turning the key, and you can basically manipulate the tumbler to where you feel a little click that has it moved out of the way, and that tension on the actual lock mechanism holds the tumbler out of the way. So that's like the simplest process of picking a lock is that like 2-part process. Turn it a little bit with tension, and then you basically manipulate the tumblers into place.
Right.
Yeah, that gave me an idea that this might not work, but I'm gonna try it. Taryn is gonna try to, with his thieves tools, check the lock on the pedestal just to see how many like tumblers there are to manipulate. To see if we can figure out which key they need.
Give me a short moment. Let's take a break here and come back. Doesn't have to be full 15 minutes. If somebody needed a full 15, take it. But I think I need probably like 5 minutes.
All right.
Yep. Sounds good.
Did you guys even go away?
Oh, I didn't.
I wonder if Justin did. I have a much better answer that doesn't take any further looking stuff up. Does it sound good for you, Chris, if I share my answer with you and allow you to at least continue that thought pattern?
I mean, sure.
My current answer at present is that you can manipulate that lock and find out that it has more tumblers than any of these keys. As far as giving you like a certain answer of how many, I don't feel like that is necessary. But say I tell you that there are 8 tumblers.
All right, then I might have an idea. Yeah, I'll wait for it until Justin gets back, I think. Yeah, I think I have an idea.
I'm still gonna go step away for a moment here then. Um, but yeah, we'll pick back up in a few moments here. I am going to still have you roll something here, but I wanted to give you that information as soon as possible just because of the nature of doing riddles.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I'm back. Chris, you can fill
Oh
me
yeah,
in.
you're good. I don't have to step away, you're fine. Um, as far as things go, um, I gave Chris the answer was that there were more tumblers than any of those keys has. Um, Giving him an actual number, I told him that there are 8 tumblers in there. But I would like, Chris, would you please make a sleight of hand check? You can do so with, what is it? No, I'm sorry, a dexterity check. And you can do so with advantage. Yeah, so you can manipulate the lock on top of the pedestal. There are 8 tumblers inside of it, and you know that none of those keys has over 3 tumblers. So you guys can chat amongst yourselves for a few moments with that information uh, in hand.
So the my first thought when I looking at these 6 keys, um, even before the tumblers was, and then thinking back to like the contrast all opinions before acting was like to see if like any of the keys almost like any of the ridges almost seem to like mirror each other, like in terms of length and setup. So um, like the fourth key going from right to left, right, has like a longer one on the very bottom, and then shorter one right above top, and then there seems to be one that's the opposite of that.
You want to compare the keys? Do a perception check. Um, Maybe you could do investigation, but perception or investigation? They certainly have some similarities to them. Um, it's hard to say that that's really failable to notice that some of them are the same length.
I mean, and then if there's 8 tumblers, the first thing I think of is that okay, the threat three, the one with three doesn't seem to fit. Has to be an even number, right?
Roll a D100 for me, Jared. Maybe over the process of like a few minutes, like 20 minutes, a half hour, you're going to eventually compare one key to another before you recognize that pretty much every single one of those keys shares at least one tumbler with another of those keys. Like they all have one tumbler that's the same length as another key.
Okay.
Do either of you have any thoughts with that information? Where is Chris at right now? What are you thinking?
I'm thinking, how did the keys look? Like, do they look like one entire key, or do they have like flat sides to them?
What do you mean?
I was thinking if
Like,
you
is it
could,
round bar or like a flat, like 2D object?
yeah, basically, I was thinking if you could layer them on top of each other and use them like one key. I don't know if you've seen like the new
If you
Uncharted
lay
movie.
them, if you lay them on top of each other, you can create a very tall key. But they are all like three-dimensional objects. They are quite thick when they lay across each other. But when you lay them across each other, you can also see that they have 8 tumblers between them, and one on top of each other. You can see 8 tumblers from the base of the key to the highest portion. There's like no extra gaps.
Yeah, I was almost thinking like if we are there like like in total 8 different lengths. And if we go either from
Exactly, yeah.
yeah, so like go if we try and go starting from either like like shortest to longest, longest to shortest. I don't know if Taryn would have gotten any idea of like aside from the number of tumblers, any additional information that might tell us which way to try. But that was kind of my next thought was try and almost kind of put them in some sort of order.
What did you mean by the longest to shortest, tallest? What were you thinking there?
So like the in terms of the length of the ridges on each, like the bumps.
I That's not really what I was trying to describe to him. I feel like I'm
Oh,
not sure if
maybe.
that was
Oh, okay. So maybe instead, like the ones at um the very end of the key, and then kind of go like that. Like there's like
so like if he stacks them. Oh, I can't do this while I hold alt. It makes circles. if he stacks them, this was precisely because he was talking about if I stacked them, like if they were 2-dimensional. If you stack them, they're, say like 6 inches tall or like 10 or 12 centimeters tall, one on top of each other. But if he looks down from above, is what I was trying to say, that he can see. I still can't do it while I hold on. I think I lost count, but my point was that he can see 8 when he stacks them like that. That you kind of see an 8-pronged cylinder when you stack them from above. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But does it look like only one key will fit in the lock at one time?
Yes, there's no way to fit all 6 keys in there.
Yeah, so I was thinking maybe it's, you have to go from like the nearest, like the ones where the ridges on the key are closest to the like the ring, and then go from like shortest or closest to farthest away, kind of thing like that. So that you hit the first tumbler with the first key, or the first 2, or however many it is, and then the next one, and the next one, and something like that.
So I think the second from the left are the closest to the key ring. The fourth from the left is the lowest to the end of the barrel.
Any Taryn, what do you think?
I don't know. We could try it, but I was trying to figure out how a lock like that would work. Might be thinking too much about it though, but I mean, this is just me going from hobby reading about locks basically, but isn't it like with the pins that you have to do them all at the same time? That they have to fit? Or else the key, like the lock won't turn.
Well, maybe it's something like once you turn it the first time, it like locks them in place so that you can then put in a second one, like a little more complex than a simple like I don't know, like, because normally, yeah, I think like if you like turn the tumblers and then you take the key out, it just resets them in place. But maybe there's something about this lock that essentially you put in one key, the first one you need to, and it locks them in place, and then you put in the second key and then the third key, and then if you get them in the right order, maybe it works. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think the problem's going to be, I know there's certainly complicated locking mechanisms out there. But I think what you will find, are you guys ready to try this where I can describe what would happen there?
yeah, I mean, I don't really have any better ideas myself, so I'm ready to try it.
Gotcha. So um let me have you do another dexterity check here, Taryn. And this will just be a straight dexterity. So, as you go to manipulate this trap, you are going to find that to insert the key, you can't hold the tension with like there's always, I don't know the name of the tools offhand anymore. I have lockpicks because I find it very interesting, and there's one of them that is, I think it's just called the tension wrench. You will basically find that with the key, the barrel is the same size as the entry area where you normally put a tension wrench, while you use the pick to basically like scrape across the rollers. So to put in the key removes your ability to get the tension wrench on there. What you do is kind of almost just try to use friction force from the top of the pedestal to apply a similar level of tension and put in the key, and it does indeed manipulate those two barrels to where you lock them into place. When you go to remove the key, you are basically going to be in a position where you are picking the lock just with a tool that knows the height of the barrels that you need to manipulate. You can continue to try like this, where you are holding that friction on the top, or you can go back to just trying to pick this like you would pick any other lock, because you are indeed picking this lock presently. But would you like to hold this? Would you like to try to pick the lock from where you're at? Or do you want to just let it reset and try to pick the lock? But that's kind of where I think Taryn would find himself. Did that make sense?
I was trying to go through it in my head about how I would do it.
Yeah, like, have you ever rock climbed before?
Nope, never.
Gotcha. Every once in a while when you're rock climbing, you have to scrape the wall, and it's because you don't have anything to hold on to. You just need to like put that friction into the wall, and it allows you to get up to the next hold. Often you scrape like with a foot, but you can do it with your hands. Otherwise, it almost looks like, I feel like you're like a DJ kind of spinning the turntable, where you're using your offhand to hold the tension on the locking mechanism.
Yeah, I'm not trusting this inside. He's gonna try to just reset it, basically. It goes.
All right, when you reset it, I need you each to make a dexterity saving throw, and I need your companions to make dexterity saving throws as well. And then I'm going to do Eileen, Zaps, Eku, Orvex. So when you release the tension on this locking mechanism, these 5 club-like orbs, the pseudopods from the snail, are going to start to shine as they glow with an inner light, and then they are going to blast out, and a white light is going to kind of shine from each one, and we are going to have, I think that's going to be a lot of failed saves. Alrighty, so Jarek, you are able to dodge these beams of light. You are going to take... What is that, 41? So, Jarek, you are going to take 20 radiant damage as you dodge this light. Taryn, I believe you can evade this. You are taking 20 as well with evasion. 41 if you do not. Oh, wait a second. I'm sorry. I'm looking at your sidekick there. You saved as well. So you can take no damage if you use evasion with Taryn.
I don't have evasion yet. I only have the uncanny dodge. That's
Evasion's level 7 of Rogue.
Oh,
I think
you guys
evasion
are
is
still
level 11.
6?
No, I think evasion is like level 11. Uncanny dodge is just for attacks.
I thought evasion was sooner than that, but maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
I felt like evasion was sooner. I thought it was 7 or 8, or 6 or 7.
Yeah, no, from what I remember seeing, it was like 11 for evasion. Like when it comes to like dex saving throws.
No, evasion 7th level. 11th level is reliable talent. That's where you can't roll below a 10 on on anything
Oh
you're
wait,
looking
then yeah, I
to pick
do
up?
have it. I mean, I have been looking wrong like crap. I do have evasion.
All
Oh,
right, yeah. So, you should be able to take no damage from that, Terran.
all right.
And then I'm not even sure if I'm necessarily going to mark it right now for. I guess I have to. Island and Zaps will each take the full brunt of it, 41 damage. Island will be blood.
How many con saves would that be for Zeros and Quinn?
I think the save is impossible, and it's just one wound. I think that's the idea. Otherwise, because it's 66, I think the save is impossible, but it's 6 wounds. That's where I feel like it kind of falls apart. There's not like a. I feel like you were supposed to do it for each d6, but I feel like it makes more sense when it's not necessarily like an auto fail.
Yeah, I guess I don't know if it's like it would depend. Like I'm almost thinking like one per orb, but then
Well, and that's the thing. It's not necessarily that you're getting hit by all of these. It's definitely more that these are just extremely powerful.
gotcha. Okay. And this happened when Taryn took the key back out, or like released the tumblers back to their original position.
Effectively, yeah. Taryn pretty much can tell at this point that picking that lock and failing it is extremely dangerous. Manipulating that lock is dangerous. You just lucked out the first time that you put the key in to feel those tumblers.
Good to know. Holy crap.
Yeah, and Zaps is in the same point. Zaps and Island are basically taken down to critically wounded immediately upon this happening. Um,
Can we send them outside?
Orvex is critically wounded as well. And I think she's doing fine. She dodged it too, so she took half. So I think what you guys can come to the conclusion of is that yeah, it's best to have people outside.
I mean, we
It's best
can.
to have as many people outside as possible while you are trying this. If you are going to pick it, you have to recognize that it's supremely dangerous. But Taryn is probably the one most equipped for it.
Yeah, I mean, imagine there may be some other way that there has to be some trick to these keys. They wouldn't go through all this elaborate presentation if just had to try and pick the lock.
Yes, there's something we're missing at least. And there was nothing more on like the giant statue, no more scriptures or anything.
How many pseudopods did you say that the snail had, the statue?
5.
Are there any, if we like examine those pseudopods, is there anything, are they fairly similar to each other? Is there anything that special about any of them that leaps out if we look at them?
I'm not sure where this temple actually has kind of the description of Unk blinding Obtoa, but that would effectively be somewhere inside of here. Um, let's say it's on the statue, not the pedestal. As far as the actual appendages go, I don't think there's really anything else for you to spot there. But I would say at some point when you send enough of the party outside, somebody is going to stumble upon the fact that the outdoor room is filled with rusted keys.
Oh, the ruined building.
Yeah. So you guys have these 6 like perfectly fine copper keys from within the temple, but outside in the ruins there's hundreds of keys.
Those maybe we just take a pile of keys each and try and start going through them, see if jumps out of us among these rusted keys.
That might be full myself. But can we look for a key that resembles like the big key we made with all of them?
Roll a perception check. As you kind of sort through the keys that are still more or less there, you kind of come up with this large batch of keys, taking a little bit of time to look for the pattern that the 6 keys inside make. You find one key is the same pattern. Offhand, it does not matter in the least bit, but I'm pretty sure it is the 3rd key from the left in the center row.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure if we were gonna have to.
No, this is purely a time sink. You guys kind of did it backwards by walking past the room, but you pretty well figured out the general idea of what these keys are doing.
Gotcha.
But eventually, Taryn can certainly find the correct key, and you can go inside, and if you would like, test it against the lock.
Yeah, I'm gonna test it. Just gonna tell everyone to wait outside just in case.
Yeah, good luck, Taryn. We'll root you on from hopefully safe distance.
Yep. Here goes nothing.
When you turn the key, there's going to be a slight grinding sound from within the pedestal, and a cube is going to rise up with the flail snail engraved upon it. You have your 5th cube, kind of 7th.
Yeah, great. I got it. And Terry walks back out again. But I'm sorry. I'm just kind of kicking myself that we didn't look inside here before we went into the temple. God damn it.
Yeah, we should have realized there was something we were missing.
Yeah. Fuck.
Oh, and
We need
even
to focus on the keys.
yeah, and even on the map, I think now you can kind of I don't know if those are supposed to be keys that are depicted.
Yeah, I mean they kind of do look like keys.
I didn't notice it before, but now that I know that there are keys in there, it's like, oh yeah, those do look like keys. So I think Jarek is going to take a little bit of time and um, he's going to try and heal up, patch up some of the wounds on Orvex, Zapt, and Island. I don't know how much you're actually keeping track of like specific hit points. I'll roll the healer's kit for each of them.
I'm not entirely sure what the ideal method here would be. You guys aren't really Are you hiding any information from Orvex about how many cubes you all have?
No, I don't think so. I even think we mentioned the Yuan-ti to him.
So, at present, you guys effectively have the information about where all 9 cubes are. You have 6. You have 5. The Yuan-ti have 2, and the Red Wizards have 2.
Yeah. So I guess the question is, do we? Guess we need to try and get those 2 from the Red Wizards. Jarek is going to reiterate too that like we can't trust the Yuan-ti and Rosny. So we shouldn't be adamant that we shouldn't be handing over the rest of the cubes we have now to them. We essentially try and get back the 2 we've already given them at some point if we can. But probably first step would be to try to find the Red Wizards and get those other 2.
Question is where we could find those red wizards, though. Do you think we should maybe go back to their camp, or should we start looking?
Yeah, I mean the Yuan-ti attacked their camp. May not want to return there. They may have set up camp somewhere else. They may not know that we have all of the other cubes, so they may still be looking for temples themselves. We could try. We know the ones that they've been to, the ones that we met them at. Maybe we try and pick one of the ones that we don't think that Orvex doesn't know they've been to yet, and that we don't know they've been to yet, and maybe see if we can catch them on their way there, or we could try and see if the Yuan-ti know where they are, if they've chased them anywhere or are keeping tabs on them. Possible they tried to flee back, Nah, they probably wouldn't do that and leave Omu without the cubes or with only an incomplete number of them. Those are kind of my um, possible ways we could try and go about looking for them.
My bad, I'm coughing like crazy. I want to add, and I don't necessarily know if I can express all of this or if I have an idea how to express it. But Orvex understands that the Red Wizards are certainly badass, that they are dangerous and powerful enemies. Which also leaves him to not necessarily assume, in the same way as staying in the Red Wizard camp was dangerous, he doesn't necessarily assume that they are eradicated simply because they were not present or coming back for him. Probably also at least somewhat expecting that they wouldn't just abandon him, being that he was kind of their expert on the cubes. And this is where I don't necessarily know how he would express this, but I think on some level he would kind of offer to try to negotiate terms between you and the Red Wizards. Among the things that he would probably mention is that the Red Wizards are probably not going to find any terms where they would work with the Yuan-ti. And I think on some level, he would mention at least a duplicitous nature to red wizards shouldn't necessarily be trusted in the same way you don't trust Rosni, because in the long run, as not being magic users, you're nothing in their book. And I feel like he'll bring that kind of thought up without necessarily recognizing that he also is not a magic user and is nothing in their book. He still thinks himself important.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like a bargaining, maybe there's something the wizards want other than the cubes. Or I mean, the cubes are a means to an end, right? They're not the end in themselves.
Yeah, the cubes are purely the key to entering the uh effectively the dungeon, to entering the tomb of the nine gods.
Right. So maybe there's, I mean, there's something they want inside there. If we offer to, depending on what it is, try and recover it for them, but they would have to give us the cubes. We probably have to maybe, I don't know, bluff and make it seem like Yuan-ti don't have any, because if the red wizards and the Yuan-ti are not going to
The Yuan-ti do not know that you are working with me. The red wizards do not know that I am working with you. Perhaps you could make a bid for your cubes with the Yuan-ti, and I can approach the wizards with a negotiation. Otherwise, perhaps we should try to take the red wizard's cubes and approach the Yuan-ti with our own. But I believe we've come to a head where we will need to decide which or where to embrace our allies and to attack our enemies.
Jarek's thinking it may be best not to, because if we try and take the two cubes from the wizards first and then approach the Yuan-ti, Yuan-ti could then, because they already have two, they could try to actually just overpower us. We know that we're outnumbered by them. They could just essentially try to take our six. So it may make more sense if Orvex can try to thinks he can try to negotiate with the red wizards while they have two. We go to the Yuan-ti with our uh, six, five. Uh, Try to get the two from the Yuan-ti, and I don't know. What do you think, Taryn?
Yeah, I am really unsure. But yeah, I feel like it's a good idea to try to negotiate at least.
Do you guys see kind of part of almost the hole in the plan is that either side you need to get two cubes from to kind of be able to finish the negotiations with the other. You either need the two cubes from the red wizards to like finish everything with the Yuan-ti, or you need to get your cubes from the Yuan-ti to negotiate with the wizards.
Right. So okay. So we have to kind of do one then the other. In the red wizards are certainly, I think. I mean, both of those groups are not to be trusted. I feel like it may be. Jarek's thoughts are maybe easier to or eager to come to a final agreement with the Red Wizards. So maybe we try to get the two from the Yuan-ti first. That we have 7, and then go try and finalize things with the Wizards. Wizards may also be, if it comes to a fight, maybe uh less. I mean, the Yuan-ti are kind of ensconced in that, they're. I don't know. If it comes to a fight, I feel like Jarek would probably rather fight the Wizards than the Yuan-ti. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Taryn's just thinking like he doesn't trust the Red Wizards at all at the moment. While the Yuan-ti, he knows they tried to enslave us, and well, that's a bad thing. But they also let us go eventually. And Rosny, at least from Rosny's point of view, seemed to not be entirely the bad guy in the story. So he's kind of leaning towards working with the Yuan-ti more than the Red Wizards.
I think at like this point, Jarek is going to try to relay more of what he had learned in his dream, um, about Rosny and the Yuan-ti. Um, so let me just to refresh my memory, my notes from that.
So I think you know that not only was Rosny one of the protectors of Mesro, I can't think of the actual name that Uptoa created, these demigods, who the wife
The Beret?
of, yeah, the Baroi, who the wife of um,
Artis was.
artist Kimber, yeah, his wife was one of the Beret. Um, you would know that Rosny as well was one of the Beret. Um, think potentially if you're having the conversation in front of Orvex, you guys kind of going over this with him in present there.
I think Jarek might kind of take Karen over to the side a little bit, like away from.
Gotcha. So you can basically share that on some level, Rosny was one of the Beret and was exiled when he turned on them. I think that was among the information that you got in your dream, that he turned on them and started to attack Mesro.
Yeah, I have like he long ago betrayed all of his people. I have the Tabaxi. Was he originally a Tabaxi, or I may
That was
just.
kind of what I was going to give you from Orvex, but yeah, the original people of Mesro, all of the people who used to be the old Omawans were all Tabaxi. The Tabaxi are almost eradicated here, but Tabaxi are the native people. All of the Beret were Tabaxi. Rosny used to be Tabaxi.
Yeah, and then so essentially Veratsny is being used by someone. He's a pawn of somebody far worse.
Which I believe you guys know they are attempting to wake up Dendar, the Night Serpent.
Right, and then Jarek in his dream had also learned that they had built, or Rosny, I think, or Rosny, the person kind of controlling Rosny, had built a construct that basically is like fed souls, soulmonger. But you so yeah, so basically what Jared's trying to get across is like we definitely can't trust Rosny, or I don't think the Yuan-ti. I mean, they let us go because they needed it. They wanted us to do their dirty work, but I no doubt they would. They thought they could just kill us and take the cubes. They would do that. I mean, so the Red Wizards, but
Yeah, Taryn is pretty stunned from hearing all that. Just go, and you found all this out in a dream? Like, what? Divine intervention?
well, it a dream, but that's more more than a dream. Felt like I was actually somewhere else, and then he's gonna like he'll. I think while he was relating the story, he'd have pulled out like the orchid and like this bird feather, and kind of like as he's like kind of trying to relay the what he the tale that he remembers, he's like kind of like sniffing at the flower and kind of like almost like rubbing the feather between his fingers, trying to like use those kind of sensory kind of reminders to jog his memory. And he'll like kind of relay it. He picked these things up. He found these things like in his dream, but they're actually they're in his hands and they're tactile.
I think you could also recall that you had gone, that was a trip to Oralungu, and I think all of you would remember that that was where Kimber was heading when you all met him in the forest.
Oh yeah, okay, I wasn't sure if he actually learned the name of where he went. I know he got a name from the being that he spoke to, but maybe it would have been something like if he because he maybe would have like talked to Eku about it, because Eku's been in his dreams, and he think, and maybe she like having maybe if he like had described kind of the area, yeah. So maybe they,
That was one of the things we had talked about, I think like a week or two ago, where I was saying, like, when Zaps asked about her dragon form, I was going to offer to go into his dream and show him. But if he did not go for that, I was actually, or if I was going to offer Jarek, because it was when you brought up your dream, she was going to offer to go into the dream for you, and I always just forgot to roleplay it. I feel like it was back when we were on like the north side of Omu, maybe even before you guys had gone into Wango's temple. But part of what I was getting there is if you had gone there with Eku, she would 100% be able to recognize Orolungu is a temple that is lost to Chult. It is one of the lost temples in a very similar way that that Omu is lost as well. And that's part of maybe the amazingness of the vision that I think Taryn was the person who had seen it from on top of the uh without all the maps in front of me for the names, on top of the plateau where Eku's people were. I feel like it was Taryn who saw it then. But that's almost like a vision level of a thing at this point, to recognize like part of Oerlungu's mystery is effectively people who have ever found it never find it again.
yeah. And I think and yeah, Jarek actually was told in the dream like once you leave, you'll never come back. You'll never be here again.
Yeah, I think you know as well the seer that you met is effectively somebody who is still in the ancient times of Chult. It's somebody who kind of lives like in all moments of time. So it was like for you traveling back in time, for them it's like traveling forward in time.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I need to like put the dreams in like a separate, almost like kind of notes thing. So I wanted to kind of bring it up earlier, but then it just seemed like, because I was going to have him kind of like at the end of a long rest, but then it seems there's like there was always kind of, I don't know, I just couldn't find a good place to kind of bring it all up. But now this seems like a as good a play. And this kind of now explains why Jarek's been like, we can't trust Rosny, we can't trust Rosny. But I mean, also, to Taryn's point, we also can't trust the Red Wizards.
But yeah, there's been a lot of mystical mumbo jumbo on this adventure already. So if you had some visions in your dream that told us not to trust Rusty, then I think we should go with that. Because yeah,
So perhaps when you guys go back to rejoin the group, um, maybe Orvex, having started to chat with the others, will kind of look to you all for permission to head off, search for the Red Wizards, unless you want him to come with you to deal with the Yuan-ti. And he will try to treat with the Red Wizards and see if he can negotiate for you all to have um, effectively like a summit, like a peaceful negotiation.
And then, so the idea is that while he is off trying to essentially establish contact and get arrange this meeting, we go uh, back to the Yuan-ti and try to recover those two.
Yeah, and I'd say on your perception of it, you guys might be wondering whether he is a coward, whether he's trying to not change the situation from when you guys negotiated things, or whether he is simply trying to get back to the Red Wizards. I don't think any of those three would be outside of your wheelhouse, but I think those would kind of be the potential motivations that might at least be crossing your mind.
Yeah, because when we first met him, he was pretty pretty adamant about like, don't leave me. And now he's offering to go back and off on his own, try to find the Red Wizards.
I think there would still be a certain level of like a helpful enthusiasm to it. And that's part of where I say I don't necessarily have a solid idea in mind for how he would go about doing it. Um, that's where I do want it to seem kind of like a heroic rising to the occasion. Perhaps it's more an enthusiasm that he wants to get into the Temple of the Nine Trickster Gods. Um, but yeah, that's part of where I'm not entirely sure where or how he would negotiate this. Um, Part of the problem is only in part that I made him blind, and he's not blind in the module. Um, but I feel like that's kind of like one of those aspects to like treat with, is that he is willing to attempt to negotiate if you guys want to with the Red Wizards, or at least be that in between.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, Jarek's thinking is, the Red wizards are untrustworthy, but they may be easier to strike a deal with them. But he also may just think that, I mean, because of what because of what he is, kind of what he's learned about Rosny. Um,
Yeah, well, one thing the Red Wizard has going for them is they haven't created anything called the Soulmonger, because that doesn't sound good at all.
I suppose it's possible they know about it, and that's why they want to get inside to take control of it. Also
If
terrible.
if you seem skeptical of him because he is trying to leave, or since he offers it, he would pull back pretty quickly though, and insist coming with you all to the Yuan-ti. That's one other thing that I'll add in there. If you guys show signs of like a turn of emotion because he offered to go back to the Red Wizards, I think he would quickly try to like prove um, that he'll stay by your side.
Yes, I think Jarek would be initially kind of a little bit suspicious, but the more he thinks about it, like the only way we're going to find the Red Wizards if we essentially go stumbling around, stomping through Omu, hoping we get lucky. And even if we find them, they may just attack us on sight if they know Orvex. Maybe does if he actually is, even if he's not entirely sure the man is kind of being genuine, he doesn't, it's kind of the only choice we have as he kind of reasons through it a little bit more. So I think Jarek would be, in the end, he would be kind of be willing to let Orvex go and almost kind of like trying to be almost a little bit apologetic about his suspicions, even though he still has them. Um, almost kind of like some contrition that he doesn't trust the guy, but it's, I don't know, kind of hard to describe.
Alrighty, so if we send Orvex back off, I think he will, let's say, look to kind of schedule this meeting on this high ground, effectively to say this little bit of highway that you guys have already experienced, this is kind of like what he knows crossing the river here, to say like on this high ground we'll meet 2 high suns from now, and that's basically a time that he can kind of express to you all, to give everybody 2 days. Effectively, that's to say, I think that would be the first of the next month. I think after Flame Rule, I'd have to look up the months again. I'm sorry, I deleted the month page. But to say 2 days from now, we can meet on that area. Um, and he'll come regardless of whether he finds the Red Wizards.
That sounds fine to me, Orvex. Thank you. Good luck. Your your efforts. And then I think Jarek's gonna turn back to Taryn and those of you try to formulate a plan about how we're going to cover those other two from the Yuan-ti.
Well, maybe we could just ask nicely. That might work. I mean, don't really think so, but we haven't tried it. Yeah, but maybe we can trick them into thinking that we're trying to double cross the Red Wizards, but that we need all the cubes as bait. That might.
That perhaps, but my fear is that if we tell them we're laying a trap for the red wizards to recover the last two cubes, they'll want to just tag along.
Well, there is the possibility of us doing a double cross, basically telling the Yuan-ti that we will double cross Red Wizard and let them go with us in the background, so to say, hang back, and then when we meet with the Red Wizards, we immediately tell them about the Yuan-ti. Try to, well, basically pit them against each other. But yeah, I'm not sure how that would work.
The Yuan-ti have made little effort to hide that they are still watching us. It may be pride to assume that we have not been seen, though we do not see.
True, now that you mention it, we have had few encounters or near encounters.
I guess, like, are you still moving without delay? Or having this final cube, does that give you at least a sense of kind of completion?
Even at this point, we know where all the cubes are, or I mean, or who has them. Just a matter of getting all nine in our own hands.
Here's a crazy thought. How about we go to the Yuan-ti and just tell them the truth? If they have been watching us, they basically know everything already, or some of it. So why don't we just go back and tell them the truth as they have seen it, and that we are meeting the Red Wizards later to try and get all the cubes together? And then, if they think that we are being completely truthful with them, they might trust us with it, if only so that they can try to double cross us later.
Make a good, yeah, you make a good point. If they have been watching us, then if they know we're lying. So, should we? Maybe we try to be a little, not immediately offer any information. Like we'll be truthful if they have questions, or maybe try to get a sense of what they know before we offer up. Like, don't just kind of offer them information immediately. Maybe not lie. Um, if they ask us questions, but don't offer any more than we have to.
All right. Well, let's see. Might work.
So, let's at least have you all take a short rest during that planning time. And we can kind of like move forward with you guys coming off of that short rest. And the plan is to enter back into the Yuan-ti temple. No, I don't want to have to click all the dice for these two.
Oh yeah, I ended up making that that first that 1d6 plus 11 for the healer's kit be Jarek himself, but he would offer to help try to heal up Zaps and Island. I wasn't sure if
Yeah, I'm not sure where you're at on all of the consumables. I guess it is perfectly fine to use that. And eventually, once you use up your healer's kit, we can start to give you islands kind of thing. But that was one of the other things, is that he also has healer's kits.
Well, if Garrick runs out of a healer kit, Taryn actually has one from the hag still. Yes.
okay, because I
Yes.
have 15 uses remaining. I have essentially one. I have one kit that's halfway out, and one I haven't used yet. Actually, I'm just gonna step away for 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
All right, got both of them set there. As far as things go,
Okay, sorry, I'm back.
oh, good. Both of them, I've got them set with short rest, so they are all healed up. I'm not sure if Chris stepped away. Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
So I've got you all moved over. You can make your way across and back into the kind of royal district, the like circular area of Omu before you all head back down into the entrance. You guys basically have that entrance hall ahead of you. Those two massive stone doors that basically form like the portcullis entryway into the temple of the Yuan-ti.
So I think Jarek is just going to kind of be walking up, kind of calmly, but pretty like firm, firmly walking up towards the portcullis, and I think maybe like as he gets within like 10 feet or so, he'll kind of like call out, like we've returned. Just kind of wait and see if there's any response.
Make a performance check here. So when you yell out, and kind of wait a moment, there's no response. Maybe a minute goes by without a response.
I think he'll move closer, kind of move right up to the portcullis. Um, is there any like he'll kind of try and like shout again and look if there's to see if there's any way to signal anyone inside, like any uh, a knocker or a bell or somewhere to just like bang on.
Oh yeah, I guess I've never really described these to you guys. So these doors have like a sliding mechanism like around head height. Well, at least head height for the humanoids. Sorry, Taryn. You could certainly climb up on the door to look through it, but it's like that classic like bouncer door where somebody can like look out with a little slide. So you could certainly knock on the door with a little bit of like kind of looking around. Each of these doors seems to have four holes at the base that are roughly like a couple of inches like 5 or 6 centimeters diameter.
But there's been no sign of like the slides opening or anything like that.
Correct. Still effectively no response from having yelled out.
Derek will kind of step back, turn towards Taryn, and kind of just give like a shrug, like I don't know what to do next.
Oh, let me try it then. Tay will go up to the doors, pick out his hammer, and has his back, and just start banging on the door while hollering, "Hello! Anyone there?"
Make another performance for me. My bad. I was talking with my alt not registering. I don't think you guys heard any of this. Um, did you hear me say that a minute goes by without any noise, like any response? 2 minutes goes by.
Not after Taryn knocked.
Okay, so a minute goes by in silence. During the second minute, you start to hear like very faint noises from within. I kind of want that passive perception to be rolling into doing an active perception check here, Chris. As you stop trying to get help and you start to try to listen for what is going on within. I think from within you can hear that there's certainly some sort of activity. I don't think you can really identify what it is. But I'm pretty sure the last time when you all were brought in here voluntarily, you basically came through. I feel like they effectively like knocked on the door and it opened right away. That there was somebody waiting on the inside of this door. So you guys have at least that like change of how things are, like change of procedure in mind right now.
Turning back to Yarkis, going, "You think maybe they were asleep? I think I heard somewhere that snakes like to sleep during the day, like they're nocturnal or something. Think maybe Yuan-ti or two?"
Possible, yeah. Perhaps something's happened since we were here last. Don't think the Yuan-ti and Rosny are particularly close. Been some sort of disturbance or while we've been since we were here last.
Maybe Rosny ran out of bandages.
I would think under normal circumstances they would have guards posted by. Whether they not there and they didn't hear us or they've heard us and they're trying to decide what to do. The way I don't like it.
Maybe the Red Wizards were here. Think they might have tried anything?
Um, on some level, there's at least the idea that I think you guys are like walking into a house, going like down into a compartment, and then walking along this like long, narrow corridor before you get to this location. So there's a certain level of like maybe the Red Wizards were here, but there's also a certain level of like this is a pretty well hidden place that perhaps you're not going to just stumble upon it unless you know to look for it. This map in particular, that's one thing I don't like about it having that like grass kind of coming in from it. I feel like the way this place is described, the entry is kind of like hidden in the city.
And look at if we're looking over like the portcullis and kind of the like we haven't seen any signs of like a battle or blood or anything that would suggest that there's been struggle out
Let
here.
me get a couple of perceptions from you both here. Um, let's go for looking around the outside. You don't see any signs of any like explosions or anything that would tell you that at least like the pyrotechnics of the Red Wizards happened out here. There's certainly signs of different things having like been bashed against these doors in the past. Hard to say whether anything is like new or whether those are just old wounds and old signs of these doors doing their thing. Um, but perhaps at some point, Taryn kind of gazing down underneath the door, you kind of gain like a little bit of sight through one of those holes. And perhaps you do indeed see like the slain body, where you would expect to see the guard. And it would appear that the guard is slain on the inside of this portcullis or of these doors.
Okay, that's tell Yarrick that that's not good. That's not good at all.
Something's going on. I don't know. I don't think we'll be able to force our way in. Some other way in.
You guys have like crowbars and stuff, right?
Terran does, if I remember right.
I feel like in general, the general idea behind a portcullis is that if it is defended, it is pretty much impossible to take. I think if you guys start messing with this, you'll be making a lot of noise, but you could eventually get the doors open, um, under the idea that you are either going to help or under the idea that you don't have a threat from within to defend these doors. I feel like that's kind of the way to sit on it, is that with enough time and effort, you can certainly get the doors open. If there were a hostile force within, I think that's where it would be like an impossible thought to go after Jarek.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So maybe I mean, Taryn, you have a better vantage point. If you want to lend me the crowbar, I'll see if I can try and force these open. You keep an eye out in case you see anything approaching through those holes.
Is that a short yoke? But
Your eyes are better than mine's. All I meant.
oh, all right, all right. Uh, give Yarrick the crowbar.
Yeah, so Jarek will move up and try to start working on trying to essentially force open get an opening that we might be able to get through.
Gotcha. So let's say it takes you guys some amount of time to get this door open, before you will see kind of that familiar entry hallway in front of you. Uh, the place where you were initially held is off to the east, and then there is another hall that opens up to the south of you. In the immediate presence, there's one guard who's slain at this entryway here. Other than that, once you take to the doors, if you guys hold in silence, you can hear some clash of ongoing battle. I would say to the south of you. You pretty much, I think, would hear silence from the east. What kind of thoughts do you all have as you take to this entryway?
So hearing the clashes, Jarek's gonna suggest we try and get south, get a sense of what's going on.
Yeah, seems sensible to me. If I remember right, wasn't there that the place too that where they took the cubes first time?
I think so.
I honestly don't remember, and I'm not even sure that would have gotten into my notes.
But I think because when we presented the cubes, we were in that kind of room with the pillars, right? And then they took them. I feel like they took them off to the west somewhere, but I don't know if we actually saw where they like stashed them.
So I think every time you guys have gone through one particular room, I described that you both hear like the fountain of water, and you smell the iron of blood. Did I take you guys through that room when you gave up the cubes?
Yeah, because I think the when we were first brought in, we were like blindfolded or like had like um couldn't
Yeah,
really
the
see.
first time you came in, you saw nothing, but you were still like I described like what you went through. So that was one of those things where you guys have at least the feeling of kind of how you walked around this place, and things like that smell would have been part of it in the auditory. The second time, though, when you were unblindfolded, because when you gave up the cubes, you guys did so as friends, and you were not blindfolded. Did you smell that? Do you guys remember?
Yeah, I remember you describing like the coppery scent and like the fountains of blood, and I think we actually got walked through that area on our way out.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when you guys returned, at very least on that second time, you would know that you were once again brought into the same throne room where you first met Rosny, where they took off the blindfolds. I think as far as things go, you guys have a pretty solid understanding. When you were brought out blindfolded, you came again out of that little corridor to the east, and you went down to the south. And then I think as far as things go, you guys would know that this next room to oops, I revealed that whole thing. My bad. This next room to the south of you, at very least, you walked to the east from this room, that is kind of hidden, or from this room that is to the south, rather. Yeah.
And we're coming from the north, right?
Yeah, you guys are going to be coming into this from the north. Effectively, it's just an open hallway between these two. I wanted to cut this apart so I could actually present it as smaller maps here, instead of this being a gigantic dungeon. But effectively, this is just one interconnected room from the room above you. I'd say while you are in the area of this snake statue, you guys can hear pitched battle to the south of you. I'm pretty sure I used this room to the southwest as the holding room where I think I brought you in. They had you wait with the cubes, and then they took you to Rosny. I thought I took you down in this area when you came as friends. I may be wrong there, but you effectively hear pitched battle from the south. Yeah, this whole place is lit. I don't see why you wouldn't basically see that there are Yuan-ti fighting Yuan-ti about like 60 or 80 feet to the south of you all here.
Sort of internecine conflict. Don't know who's who. So Jarek's suggests they maybe leave the battle south for now and um, try and make our way down this east corridor. We find
Let me have you all do a stealth check here. You can have advantage. Yeah, I think you guys can, under kind of the pitch battle, basically move yourselves across to this next room here and progress into. Ooh, I messed up the scale of this one. Let's kind of put you guys. So I think that's what you guys kind of see in front of you. You're coming up to like a banister, looking down about 30 feet to the ground below you. There's like a mezzanine level that's about like a 10-15 foot staircase down from where you are at. And then as you head, oh, this one doesn't show the second set of staircases. I feel like that, I feel like there's a staircase next to the pit that isn't really shown. Oh, my bad. These are all ramps. These are not stairs. They're snakes. These are all ramps. So it's like a 15-foot like ramp, about like a 60-degree, 45-degree angle down from the layer that you guys are coming on to the west here. And then you are basically walking down that ramp about 10 or 15 feet lower in elevation to that like kind of mezzanine level. And then when you progress to the next level, the ramp is, I feel like that pit of blood is way too close to it. But the next ramp does the same thing for another like 10 or 15 feet down to that lowest level. The 5 snake heads to the north of this room all kind of are dripping blood out of their fangs from somewhere else that you guys have passed through already, the sacrifice room, where you are held in the like prison area, and you have the entry or an exit to the south, a locked door to the east on the mezzanine level, and then an exit to the area where you met Rosni on the east or northeast.
Jarek's gonna turn to Tara and suggest maybe we try the where we first saw Rosny first. Head up to that northeastern, going into that audience chamber, see what's going on there.
All right. Seems fine to me.
I think Jarek he'll be trying to move quickly, so not too much concerned with stealth at this point. Do we hear, as we come into this room, do we hear any other signs of any pitch battle aside from what we've heard now coming from like our southwest?
When you get to the next room here, you're going to hear, I guess, really from this actual room, from this kind of temple of blood, you guys will hear general screams to the southeast. From the northeast, as you guys actually head past the pit of blood, you'll basically come to realize that there are next to no sounds coming from the northeast. And you can hear echoes from the south. But the predominant source of noise from this Hall of Blood is effectively the southeast.
Okay, so as he's kind of hearing that, Jarek's gonna turn to Taryn, northeast or southeast.
It's kind of your point of interest, like the place that you guys already expected to go, or the place that is making the most noise.
I'm thinking
Jarek,
southeast for the noise.
yeah, Jarek's thinking follow the noise as well.
I feel like scale wise, that looks a little more proper. I did not adjust this one correctly. Okay. As you guys go to that door, I think without a roll, you can isolate that there are multiple voices that are screaming on the other side of the door. But what sort of thoughts do you all have when you come up to this locked door here? Or not locked door, this closed door.
Can we tell what kind of screams? I mean, that's kind of hard, maybe. Like terrified, painful, like screams of battle.
I feel like only somebody in the medical profession would ask that almost. I know the sound of pain. My bad. Did it come through to roll an insight? I don't know if I was on the wrong.
I didn't hear anything.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was probably messing. I'm pretty sure I don't have the ability to press Alt when I'm hitting my file search thing. So can you please roll an insight for me, Taryn?
Can do.
Gotcha. You hear terrified screams. As you kind of have these screams kind of like rolling over your ear. There's three, maybe six or so people who are screaming inside of there. Um, don't want to offend anybody and say that there are not males and females in here, but I would say predominantly there's going to be female voices. I think mostly through history we can say all females.
Jarek's gonna look to Taryn. I think his instinct is to open the door.
Yeah, Terra's with you on that. He's definitely want to go towards wherever those screams are.
Yeah, so I think Jarek will he'll be, uh, yeah, moving up to the door to not sure if it's locked, essentially to try to help Taryn open it.
Gotcha. So if you have the intention to open that door, let me get a strength check, assuming you're just kind of trying to like put a shoulder into it on the first effort, or are you just trying to like open the door first? Like if you just check it, what are you kind of thinking realistically there? If you don't know yet whether it is locked, unlocked, heavy, light.
Yeah, I think he'll just try and give it like a shoulder ram. maybe like shouting, like, stand back, like right before he does it, just in case there's someone right on the other side. But I think is he
Gotcha.
want, yeah, get it open as quickly as possible. And his first thought is just like, yeah, like bash it down with a shoulder.
Let's go for an athletics here. All right. So when you bash this in, you will have a little bit of forward. Whoops. You have a little bit of forward momentum still kind of carrying with you as you smash the door in. You can see immediately down this hallway that there is a fountain through this hall. There is kind of a room of people, maybe about like 30 to 40 feet, humanoids, technically. They are indeed Yuan-ti, all of them more and less snake qualities, sometimes upper torso, sometimes lower torso. But effectively, you're going to bash into this room and see at least a few of these Yuan-ti who are quite scantily dressed, all of them in very kind of like gossamer clothing that kind of just hangs to the flesh, and there is very little, if anything, concealed from their clothing. And I'm going to have you all roll initiative. Because as you smash in, as the screaming continues, you are going to hear from two of these figures who yell. I think their response to the door is probably simply going to be, oh no, I don't think you guys are going to speak the language that they yell in response. Um, yeah. You guys brought Eku in with all of you here. What kind of thoughts do you all have? Are you going into most of this as the four of you? Do you want to have like any level of Eku with you? You guys want to go with the blessed idea and kind of have Eku in the background?
Yeah, I think maybe having her more in the background. I don't know if she would have blessed us
Gotcha. Still kind of
yet,
going in innocently there.
but maybe like
So
as we're like if once as we break in, if like the fighting breaks out, then maybe she'll try and bless us if the fight breaks out. But I don't think she would have cast it preemptively.
what's your dexterity on Jarek?
Plus 4, 18.
Your sword warns you when you're being ambushed, right?
I think basically, yeah, when combat's about to start, but I don't think it would know. Like, I don't think it really needs to warn. Like, I don't think it would have warned Jarek because we're charging in here. But
Yeah, I feel like this would be a little bit more along the lines of maybe it's still talking to you, kind of like a almost like it's stoked for the imminent battle here, where you kind of get just like a motivational speech from it, where it's like, "Oh, you're gonna tear it up good," something like that kind of thing. Um, it's definitely a weird aspect because I feel like it's meant to be you can't be ambushed more than that you're always having conversations.
yeah, it's like it's supposed to like essentially prevent me from being surprised. But here I'm the one bashing down the door, so I don't really think. Yeah, it wouldn't be like warning, warning. Like I think it's kind of we're beyond that point.
So you are crushing down this door. You are hearing the horrendous language of the Yuan-ti. I think at this point you guys can maybe you don't know it like all in name, but Eku is basically giving you guys the understanding that their more or less natural tongue to go to is the tongue of the abyss, that this is a language of demons and devils. Um, so that's kind of what you hear. I don't think it would be surprising to know that you're basically surprising Yuan-ti and they are not speaking to you in a tongue that you understand. But when you crush down that door, what are you thinking here, Jarek?
So okay, so
My
he
bad.
breaks.
Sorry. You see right now, like the three creatures to the east, all of them are effectively unarmed. They're the ones who are wearing like the gossamer, like they're essentially naked. Their clothing covers up very little. The two who are standing in the center, each of them has drawn weapons. Your initial understanding of this room would probably be to recognize the two withdrawn weapons are indeed hostile to at least the three that you see beyond. And that's probably whose screams you are hearing.
Yeah, so I think Jarek's instinctive, like just kind of seeing this is thinking like the like the ones to his east and like uh south and are being either like there's a sacrifice going on or something. And yeah, so his immediate thought is to make a beeline for the nearest one with a weapon. Probably the one to the south there of him. And just start I think he'd be like shouting, "What is the meaning of this?" But even as he's doing that, he's because there's some stuff in his past where this is like he's almost having like flashback kind of stuff. And he's just moving to essentially start trying to cut this one down, even as he's like shouting like what's going on.
Yeah, so I don't think you've got any distance issues there, but technically you've already moved 5 feet. But I think that puts you inside a combat with like 25 feet of movement.
Yeah, he would be like kind of rushing. Actually, he'd probably go as far as he could to try to get closer to these. To
So with that, you can make your attacks here. Uh, First attack is going to just glance off of its scales, and the second attack as well is going to be deflected against its scale.
short sword.
Kind of parrying attack with the short sword will slide into the little gap between these scales, and as you pierce into this creature, 8 damage.
Yeah, no sneak, so just 8. Yeah.
Oh wait, no, you've got a surprise on it. Can't you sneak attack when you surprise a creature? I need to look at my little handout.
Uh
I feel like sneak attack.
oh, if I have advantage, then yes.
Not a. Oh wait. Oh, this is this. I'm thinking this is where you go before it in the initiative system. There's something that's worded like that. Is that from assassinate?
Yeah, that's
Oh,
the
that's
stat.
the assassin's got a special ability. Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm not giving you like actual advantage for that attack though. Um Surprise doesn't normally give advantage though, does it? I don't think it does.
Uh,
Um
I think just more action economy.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's close. I feel like that's kind of one of those things where um potentially could have had an opportunity with assassinate. So with that, do you have any other movement? Otherwise I think it's gonna slide to Aku.
Nope. That's all for Jarek. And I don't know if I don't. I'm not sure if Zeros actually would be know that he was going to do that, so he might be caught a little flat-footed as well.
I think it's entirely likely that you at least know to kind of like finger, like on three kind of thing. One, two, and you smash into the door. So I don't think it's entirely unheard of for Zeros. Um, I don't think he would be surprised unless you necessarily want him to be surprised.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Yeah, so he would be kind of moving in a little more
Level 1
cautiously.
adventurer, maybe not thinking about that. Level 7 adventurer, you guys are badasses at this point. You kind of know, like when you're taking a room, kind of little things like that, I feel like.
Gotcha. Yeah, so Zeros would be coming in, probably not moving quite as like gung ho as Jarek, but he as he like gets in here, sees Jarek, I think he would just reach out and kind of following his not master, but um idol, launch a couple Eldritch blasts towards the same creature.
The 12 is just going to kind of, I guess it still has to be a miss. Just kind of like smash to the side as the creature's kind of slithering around. Those are not nat 20s though, right? So that's just smacking into it. 5 points is just going to kind of smash the creature a little bit as this ball of force crushes it. And I think with that, then we'll go to Eku. Eku is going to yell out to you all. Um, hmm. They're asking if you are for Rasni or Panthaza. And then I think with that, she can at least bless the three she's got a sight of, and I can throw bless on um, the two of Chris's characters and then Zeros. And then she'll take like that wall of the door. And then with that, we'll take it to Taryn.
Right, then Terran will follow after Jarek. Make it, and then try to attack. Let's see.
So moving in, your first attack is going to miss as it's ducking and weaving. Second attack sinking in for 21 points. Let's see. I think with that you'll see some pretty severe cuts and wounds, like into the scales of this creature, as you're kind of beginning to open up some of the inner flesh. What would Quinn like to do?
Quinn would go for the other one, the one up north. Just barely, if I can move through Zeros.
Yeah, I don't think that hall is necessarily meant to be too small. I think Zeros is outside of it enough that is perfectly legitimate movement. And you can get into contact with the other, and let's see her attacks.
Let's see.
Oh, my bad. Let me get a D4 from that first attack from you, because you are blessed.
Oh, right. That I am.
Okay, first attack still misses. Let's see Quinn's. Groot, you cannot speak inside of the voice channels. We can speak later. This game should be wrapping up in around a half hour-ish. I tend to have a little bit of time in between the end of this game and having to run some errands. If not tonight, I can always speak during the week. But otherwise, you are welcome to listen here. The 19 is going to hit with the 20 from Bless. Your great sword attack on the second one will hit with the Bless. Uh, Doing another 15 points of damage from her to the one to the north. Yelling out in common. You all are going to hear. The night serpent will feast on your flesh, whether we take it or she does. And we are going to have 2 attacks out at Jarek, uh, with kind of like claws and a dagger. So the first attack is going to crit. Second attack is going to miss. It is going to deal 12 points of slashing damage to you. And as the claws kind of like sink into your flesh, it's going to use them to kind of rake you closer. And it is going to try to bite down into you. And that should miss. The one up near Quinn is going to yelling out, "Human wretches." And it is going to try to wrap around Quinn and grapple her. I would like a strength athletics. I think she should have proficiencies. I don't know if she has athletics, but you could do athletics or acrobatics, which is otherwise a strength or a dexterity check with Quinn.
Oh, she has athletics, so I'll use that.
Don't think I'm going to be successful. Yeah, so it's going to try to wrap around her, and as it starts to see this failing, and she's just too strong for its body to gain this initial purchase, it is going to try to. Yeah. It is going to try to stab into her with its claws. Another crit. Oh wait, this is just a save. Um, what is that? DC 9. Yeah, that's like next to impossible for her to fail, but a DC 9 con meets beats. And then it is going to try to or try to bite down into her. 15, I do not believe will hit Quinn. And it's going to go back around to Jarek.
Yeah, so Jarek,
In a pretty wretched state. Oh, did I just close it by pressing Alt? It's going to be bloodied. As the blasts kind of smash it up against like the wall behind it, you can see that it's already like collapsed, like bone structure underneath the flesh. Oh wait, do snakes have bones? Yeah, snakes have bones. Uh, but they don't have ribs, so maybe it doesn't like visually like collapse, but you can see that creature is certainly well wounded between the slashes from Quinn and Zeros. And it should go to Eku is effectively holding there, so it's going to go to Terran.
Well, Terran is gonna nimbly try to get his way up to the other one and try to stab her with or it with karambits. Let's see.
Oh yeah, definitely not living through that crit. Describe to me how you kill this creature that is like the snake lower torso down and a humanoid male from the torso up.
Then I guess Terran, as he comes up to it, or him, like nimbly, like almost dancing up behind it and take the kravitz, stabs into the back, and then just pulls down all that he can. It's all his weight. with both of them.
So, as you all finish these two, the predominantly female harem of sex slaves is going to still be plenty of screaming happening here. Um, they are not entirely calmed from this presence. You all can see that there are effectively many niceties around this room. But among the things that I think you are going to notice is you have another one of those little alcoves that is kind of like a glowing orb that kind of sits in the alcove. And I believe you guys have now seen these in 3 or 4 different rooms. You have these kind of females running out of the little rooms that they are in, kind of around this fountain. Um, Most of them are speaking in Abyssal. Some of them are speaking in Draconic. Neither of you speak either of those. I think the kind of like once you get to calming them, you might start get some comment out of them. But what kind of initial reactions do you all have while there's simply kind of like this screaming and chaos going around you?
Well, Terran would uh, immediately like unsummon his knives, and just go hands up and like uh, try to see him, yeah, like show that he doesn't have any weapons on him anymore. Seem a little bit less threatening, hopefully.
or or supremely threatening because you now know that this person can have knife hands at any time.
There is that, yeah, but hopefully
It looks like the
seem less threatening.
gunfighter. It looks like the gunfighter. He's got like the automatic like guns like come out of the sleeves of his jacket kind of thing, where like the moment you like throw your hands up, the knives disappear from your hands. But it's like, wait a second, if they could disappear that quick, that means they can come back that quick.
And yeah, and Jarek is kind of doing something similar. Like it takes him a second. Like he's almost like kind of like staring over this like dead body of the Yuan-ti. But as he realizes, that the immediate threat seems to have been put down, he'll kind of end like turning towards the some of these kind of like captive Yuan-ti. He'll kind of see like the features of his face will kind of try to soften, and he'll try to kind of like almost like kind of like lean back and try to present like a less imposing sight. And he's going to be almost kind of like calling out to Eku, like, because he doesn't like can't hear them understand their the language they're speaking. Almost like calling back out to Eku, like tell them we won't, tell them we're not here to hurt them. And just try and essentially, yeah, kind of try and look like you know um non-threatening as much as he can.
As coated in somebody else's blood as the 4 of you look right now, trying to be non-threatening. So yeah, I think as you all kind of calm them, bring Eku in to bring the conversation, that will kind of assist in kind of the calming. Um, I think among the things that you are going to notice is you can kind of see a certain level of kind of a pecking order inside of this room as certain individuals talk. Somebody else from like across the room is going to almost kind of like not like chirp at them, but kind of like chastise them, where the person like shuts up almost. But you'll almost start to see like a little bit of a pecking order. The only person who doesn't seem to get interrupted over the next 5 minutes of still kind of chaotic conversation is one of the females who is coming out of the alcove to the right. And you'll see that even the other two females in that right alcove are only interrupted by the female who is uninterrupted. And you can kind of at least gather that those three are the like top of this food chain. Um, I think you're going to have one of the females from that side speak to you in that Panthaza has begun her revolt against Rasni. And like some of the others, like from the north, you'll kind of hear them hissing until her attention is drawn towards them, and they all kind of quiet down. And until her attention kind of turns back to you, you can start to hear that like low hiss from them in the north, kind of continuing, giving you a sense that there is a not just like the pecking order, but also kind of like a political stance happening inside of this. And you'll kind of hear this continued story kind of coming out of the ones from the east, where they kind of pass this story that Rosny, for good or bad, allied himself with you. Not all thought this wise. And kind of like again chastising the ones to the north, they quiet down their hissing and might get a little bit of kind of movement from those to the south who like with a quick word kind of throw in like one will yell out it was folly, and another one to kind of yell out it's always best to send in sacrifices first. um but over the next kind of few minutes of this happening inside of this room, you all are going to kind of recognize on some level that the story from the East seems to be coming from a perspective of Rasni. Those might be his most favored concubines. The concubines from the South are kind of a split. They will almost be neutral in that they have chastisement for both Rasni as well as for Fantasna. And then those from the north are kind of explicitly against Rasni's choice to ally himself with you. And you all are going to come to at least some recognition that these three chambers represent the macrocosm of the Yuan-ti here, where some are fighting to defend Rosny as loyalists, effectively like the propaganda would be as loyalists. Some are fighting for Fantasna, who you all will pick up is the high priestess of this temple, and she turned on Rosny. They would be effectively the kind of traitors or the revolutionists, themselves describing themselves kind of as like the conservatives or the kind of like purists, and then those in the south are almost the ones who just kind of want to keep their noses down and almost see who's going to come up on top before they pick a side. uh, So that's kind of like an amalgamation of a longer conversation there of what you guys are going to kind of hear and get from some of these creatures. With the last few minutes that we have in the day, do you all have any immediate conversation for these women, for these concubines? There's no reason that none of them could be male, but if there was a male inside of there, it would be a eunuch, because this is indeed the harem.
Yeah, I think Jarek would be kind of, seeing the dynamic play out, kind of, focusing his attention on the one who seems to be if not the one in charge, but like the, head. But I think he kind of his, hearing all this, he wants to know like what is does Fantaza does she have designs on the cubes like uh does she any mention of the temple, or not the sorry, the tomb of the nine trickster gods?
Alrighty, so when you start to kind of pull the one from the north that seems like kind of highest in their pecking order aside to discuss this and almost discuss the kind of like what are the politics of Phantasma, um, when a woman from the east basically rushes to claw at the one that you are going to speak to, how are you all reacting? What do you have thoughts there? I'm tempted to say, let me get dexterity checks from the two of you to see how fast do you react when she basically comes across to like claw the face off of this woman who would speak of Fantasia to you.
Yeah, I think Jarek's initial reaction would be to try to essentially interpose himself and
Gotcha, that works. Let me get a dexterity check from you here. We'll have kind of like this can be, yeah, I think it's simple dexterity. You have initiative though as advantage, right?
with the sword, yeah. I don't know if it would work when it's
She's not threatening you. That's part of why I was like curious about it at the start of this, was because this room isn't necessarily hostile, but it's also not necessarily friendly. I
yeah, I
think
mean,
we'll have to kind of go with that, and we'll just see what she rolls. Yeah, so she's at very least going to get her claws into this other one's face before basically raking across her face, where you can separate them. Um, Maybe as simple as then asking like Quinn to kind of keep a little bit of separation between you as you discuss with that one. Um, Let me get a persuasion from you, please. Taryn, are you kind of still like hanging out for this? Do you have other thoughts as he asks this question?
No, I mean he's curious about who like this Phantasma is.
Gotcha. So, I mean, with a little bit of like poking and prodding, the two of you can kind of continue that conversation. Among things, you can clarify more that she is kind of like a second in command in this location, where Rosni is a point of power in the general structure of the Yuan-ti. Phantasnia is kind of the religious domain of power in the structure of the Yuan-ti. Um, where let's see, I think you can kind of pick up that as far as they are concerned, the night serpent cares not um, for the dealings of Rasni. They have what would seem no interest in Rasni's quest to go deeper into the temple below. Um, I think you could probably pick up that Phantasnia was displaced by Rosni coming in and taking power. Um, does that leave either of you with any kind of follow-up questions?
I mean that jives with I think what Jarek had learned in his dream as well, that there was focus on Dendar, but essentially the Yuan-ti were there was some disconnect between the two, so that kind of uh, makes sense to him. So that would probably be the main thing he was looking for is okay if they're not if that faction it doesn't is not seem to be concerned, then I guess the only next question is like where do you know where they are, Brosny or Phantasma?
So kind of in the same way, there's almost going to be a power shift in just the few moments of with your attention, with Quinn kind of keeping back the one to the east here. You can kind of see that dynamic change where like the hisses are going to start to come from the east, where those from the north take a little bit more uh, of like a podium to speak. They start to speak with a little bit more authority, just like in these moments of one, you defending, two, you continuing kind of this conversation with them. You'll still hear occasional kind of curses from those to the south that are kind of both ways. Uh, I think the conversation will go to a point where, as far as those who seem helpful, um, it's both kind of north and south. You'll pick up little clues, predominantly from those who are speaking to you from the north, that effectively they have been locked in here under guard by Fantasia for the better part of. I'm not sure how snakes would consider the day cold blooded. They should care about the day. So yeah, I would say on some level they're kind of giving you like that idea that for the better part of this day, this revolt has been going on here.
Gotcha. Okay, that was almost actually going to be almost his next question, and like how long is how long have you been locked in here? But they kind of answered that already. So I don't think Jarek wouldn't probably be able to think of any immediate questions after that.